Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So as you'll see today, I'm sitting in my BMW E60 M5. Now, if many of you follow me on Instagram, you already know, you've been seeing a lot of photos being posted up on Instagram regarding me around with the E60 M5. Today we're doing a test drive review of the car. Now, a lot of you already know, I badmouthed this car for many months when I started YouTube and to probably the present. I did go and buy one, and a lot of people have been asking me to do a video about why I end up buying the E60 M5 and also how I fell in love with this machine, considering I hated it so much. And everyone asked me, how can one man hate a car so much but end up with one? And I'm going to show you why that is and what made me fall in love with this car. So if you guys don't know, I've got the GoPro sitting behind me. It's plugged up on the sunroof here. It's going to be facing down, watching the whole area of view, so you guys get to see everything, how I'm driving it and what made me actually fall in love with this car. And you guys will actually get to see the reason why I love the E60 M5 and now why I have a passion for this car, considering I hated it so much many months ago. I got one and now I can't be without this car, and I'm going to go over the reasons why that is. So let's go out and I'm going to start the GoPro up and you guys are going to get to see me driving the E60 M5. Okay guys, so the question I get asked all the time is why I bought a BMW E60 M5. So to answer a lot of people's questions, because a lot of people are going to ask me why I purchased a BMW E60 M5, I didn't go out or plan to buy this car. This car was just there at the time when I actually went to purchase another car. Now, if a lot of you remember, I was meant to buy a 340i F30. I got in it, I didn't like it, and I thought I was going to walk away and have to go and find another car that day. But it turned out when I went there, they had this sitting there which the last owner couldn't afford to pay the bill, a BMW. And bearing in mind we was going through the pandemic at the time, so trying to sell this was like a no-go. Trying to sell these in the UK full stop is like very hard as it is, because people are scared of them or want them with warranty. So the guy took me around the corner, showed me this car, and I was like to him, I don't want one of them. And after I actually saw it, he told me it was cheap, and he was like to me, trust me, it's cheap. He was like, for the price of it, he's like, you're going to come out on top of it. I was like, okay, fair enough. Took it out for a test drive to see what they were going on about, why it was in reduced limp mode, because that was the main reason why they wanted rid of it, because they couldn't solve it and the guy couldn't afford the bill, because obviously they just fitted a new CCC unit and various other bits to the car. So I took it anyway, out for a test drive. It was going into limp mode, so I wasn't able to fully experience the full RPM limit due to that. Well, after I took it out for a test drive, and you know, I ended up really enjoying the car. Now, I've never driven one of these. It was the first time I'd ever driven one. I just took it out for that drive, took it out for the blast, ended up falling in love with it, especially that V10 engine. You guys know I love my naturally aspirated engines. Now, little to know was I gonna know that I was gonna be coming back with an E60 M5. But then when I drove the 340i, which was the B58 engine, I didn't like the sound that that made. Now, I'm straight six all the way. I usually love straight six, but it's not naturally aspirated, and that's what wasn't doing it for me. I like naturally aspirated engines. When I end up driving this, I had never driven one. Now, I know a lot of people love this car, adore this car, and I actually see why now. Now, bearing in mind it was the first time I'd ever sat in an E60 M5, when I got in it, I just thought, oh, it's just like my normal car. So it just reminded me of sitting in my normal E60. It's not until you actually drive it, you actually experience what this car is all about. And that V10 sound is just absolutely epic. Now, as many of you guys know, this was the first M5 to come alongside with the M button. So what I'm gonna go is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you what that M button actually does. So if we just press this right now, and as you see there, guys, this comes up in an eye-watering speed at a rapid time. And you guys have to remember, when I purchased this car, it was not going to the full 9,000 RPM. It was in limp mode, and I couldn't actually enjoy the power like I do now. Another thing that made me fall in love with this car was the active seat bolsters. Now, when I was considering buying an M5, I always wanted the F10 M5. But after driving a turbocharged car, it just isn't for me. It's quick, it's very quick, but you just don't get the same experience as you do from this V10. Secondly, it just isn't, it's not the same. Now, when you're driving this car, you actually have to work for the power. Something a lot of people don't want to do these days because a lot of people are lazy. But then you get the benefit of that actual beauty V10 engine. Obviously the S85 is a legendary engine. Many of you guys don't know the history of that engine. It was built when BMW first built it, it actually come out of the factory with 900 bhp. They had to get a load of engineers to actually detune that engine with a load of sensors and computers to bring the car to actual where it is today at 507 bhp. Now, if many of you guys don't know, in standard form, this car only runs 400 bhp, and you can adjust it with the M button. Now, also when you press the M button, you'll also get the active seat bolsters, which will come in as well, as many of you guys know, which is a feature that is never going to be seen again on any car. Now, that's what stopped me getting the F10 M5 and the newer ones. You are never going to get that, and this is one thing that actually makes the E60 M5 stand out. It's them active seat bolsters when cornering. It's something a lot of people are never going to experience. It wasn't available on E39 M5, and if many of you guys know as well, the E39 M5 also didn't have a sport button that you would press. The E39 M5 is still a legendary car by any means, and I do love that car with a passion as well. It is the first and only beautiful M5 they ever designed, E39, but the E60 M5 is beautiful in its own way. The crisp angles era still looks modern today on the roads. It's aged very, very well and blends in with all the newer cars still today. That V10 engine goes with this E60 very, very well, and it works its magic as soon as you press the M button. As I said, the cornering on it is actually faultless. The M button stiffens up all the rear suspension, stiffens up the steering, and as you guys know, it's got the electronic throttle actuator. So bearing in mind the electronic, the two cogs are not working all the time. There's only one cog actually working. When you press that M button, all three cogs actually come into sync and they all work together. Now, a lot of you will be asking me what made me fall in love with this car. The pure, simple fact what made me fall in love with this car was because of the way it drives and handles. Like, I've got a 530i M Sport, as many of you guys know, with the M52 engine, but this handles so well. You know, I don't want to say it, for a big car, a big family saloon, this car handles absolutely brilliantly. Now, you guys got to remember as well, this is the only family sedan with an actual exotic supercar engine. There is no other car on the market still today with this engine, which is 5 doors, and you can fit a family inside it and go away and still have a supercar. This car is what is known by many as a sleeper. It can be absolutely calm and placid, but then it can turn into an absolute animal if people want to try and test you as well, which is what the E60 M5 is very good at. It's good at being a sleeper. You know, it will sit there 1 minute and then become absolutely awoken the next with one touch of a button, and absolutely turn into a savage and keep up with your Ferraris, your Lamborghini Gallardos. It will keep up with them. There's not many family sedans that can keep up with an exotic cars still today. I just want to let you guys know as well, bearing in mind that this car still gets looked at even still today on the road. A lot of people know what's under the bonnet here. It's a very special car, and only few people know what's under the bonnet. A lot of people would say it's a replica. A lot of people would think it's, you know, just kitted up like an M5, as many people do in the UK. A lot of people do their M5s up with their 535 diesel or 545i's, trying to become an M5 replica, which is not. This isn't. And you know, just pushing the M button, I can completely show that. When I push that, people know this is not a car to be messed with. Now, there is a lot of knocking on this car as well, and like I'm gonna say, it ain't just him, guys, it was me as well. But there's a lot of people who are knocking this car, saying the transmission's unreliable. The transmission and the engine is not unreliable in this car. This is probably the most reliable car you're ever gonna get, and I mean that, ever, on a BMW. You guys have to remember, this is built by BMW's M Sport division. This is not built by just BMW's lackeys in the normal BMW factory in Germany. This is built by the M division. It's all tuned by the M division. The suspension's tuned. It's all set up to be a motorsport car. Now, a lot of people knock the SMG gearbox. The SMG gearbox is very, very reliable. Anyone who moans it's unreliable is people who don't know how to drive it, people who end up messing it up from not knowing how to drive it, or garages misdiagnosing it, and then they're ripping out the gearbox and it still don't fix the issue. A lot of the problems people have are usually with the EDC on the ABS, which, as I've said to you many times, if they're on the same tree, will knock out the SMG gearbox. These SMG gearboxes are very, very, very reliable, and they do not go wrong if looked after properly. The SMG pumps, yes, did have their failures, but they stopped having that later on in life after BMW rectified it with the latest revised pump. The same with the oil pump on the engine. This car has had it all done, and most of these cars in the UK will have all the revised parts already fitted on the M5s. I don't know about the USA. A lot of people, though, in the US, the reason they call the gearbox unreliable, and this is from reading on forums, was because when these cars come out, they had a bad software glitch and the gearbox was absolutely terrible. BMW rectified that with 3 later updates later on in life, and it rectifies a lot of the issues that these cars were having, i.e. the oil pump overheating and burning itself out, you know, the clutch wearing itself down continuously. The clutch characteristic values, you know, have been a lot better taught in by BMW than what they were before. And the same with the gearbox. The software update actually repairs a lot of the issues that people are still saying exist with these cars. You know, this SMG does not drive as bad as a lot of people make it out. You know, you got a lot of people only saying they would only buy this if it had a manual gearbox or it had a DCT transmission. No. The reason BMW put this together with the SMG3 with this design was to make it like a Formula 1 car. You know, you're never going to get a race engine in a car ever again. And it's a pure fact. They're still making V8s. Yes, they're making things faster. But this car was fast in its time and is still fast today by today's standards. You know, this car can still do easily 204 miles an hour, which can keep up with even new BMW M5 still today, the F10, F90 M5, the M5 competition, a lot of them. This car will still press that top speed, which a lot of cars still can't do still today. And I just want to state another thing. A lot of people who say this car is shit, either A, they've never ever driven one, B, they can't afford to own one, or C, it's pure fact that they don't know how to drive them properly, because these cars are absolute beasts if you know how to drive them properly. Now, so I've had 330i convertibles with the SSG, I've had 325i's with the SSG, I've had even 330i Club Sports with the SSG. Now, that is very common here in the UK. I've even driven the E46 M3 with the SMG2. You know, they drive absolutely wonderful. Even people in the E46 moan about the SMG being unreliable. That is unreliable. But BMW fixed a lot of the issues on the SMG3, and this gearbox, as you see here, changes absolutely faultlessly. They do not go through clutches every 30,000 miles, and even if they do, please bear in mind you're buying a supercar here. It's a Formula 1 derived engine. You're gonna expect parts to fail. That's just the way these cars are. And you've got to be bearing in mind to fix it yourself. You know, these cars are very, very simple to maintain and very cheap to look after. If you compare it to a Lamborghini or an exotic supercar, which needs a clutch every 4,000 miles, how can you come and knock this E60 M5, which needs a clutch every 30 to 40,000 miles? I think that's absolutely insane and stupid for anyone who can knock a car that needs a clutch every 40,000 miles, where parts will last as long as 100k once fully sorted, but yet they won't knock a Lamborghini or an exotic supercar that needs things replacing every 4,000 miles, 5,000 miles. It doesn't make sense. Service prices are through the roof on a car like that. This car is a V10 F1 derived engine, and you can drive it for less money than a Lambo, yet you're going to get better mileage as well than you would on a Lambo on the parts on this car, yet people want to moan about it. I just think it's absolutely insane and bizarre how someone can moan about this car. I really do. The gearbox is absolutely faultless. Do not believe what you hear. A lot of the issues were rectified. This car has had all the latest revised stuff, bearing in mind it's a 2006. It's had all the revised stuff, and I've got all the receipts showing what all the work was done by BMW. The latest Vanos oil pump, the latest oil pump for the gearbox as well. You know, Everything's been fine on this gearbox. It runs absolutely perfect. The car's sitting on 100,000 miles and it still has no issues even today. Anyone who wants to come and knock this car, as I said, can't afford to own it or they've never driven one, because the car absolutely pulls. And I'm just about to show you guys when we press that M button again right now. When we drop the gears, we'll drop it to third and we're off. As you see, guys, there is no other car that's going to give you the feeling and pure driving pleasure as the E60 M5 with the V10 engine. It's just never going to happen. So if a lot of you guys think you're going to get that from the F10 M5, you're very mistaken. After driving an F30 with the 340i engine, I can honestly say right now, that wouldn't be the car for me. I want to get an F10 M5 purely for the channel, but if I'm honest, I would prefer to drive the V10 any day over the F10 M5. I don't like turbocharged cars, never have, I've never been a fan of them. I'm a naturally aspirated guy. I like my naturally aspirated engine, and this V10 will never be seen again ever in a BMW. BMW are more proud of this than they have ever been of any other engine. Hence why, if you go into the BMW museum in Munich in the M division, you will see this engine in their museum alongside the E39 M5's engine with the E60 M5 engine, but you will not see an S63 TU sitting in their museum. They know that's never going to be a masterpiece. They know that engine's never going to be highly sought after. The only reason it's highly sought after at the moment is because a lot of them are having issues before 2014, which a lot of them were actually blowing up. Now, the reason a lot of people call these cars unreliable as well is because the M5 is like no other. Let me assure you of something about these cars. These cars, when they've got an issue, will reduce your power immediately to protect the engine. And that's what a lot of people do not like about this car. They want to get it and then call it bad because they don't want to replace the parts needed, and the car won't let them drive anymore. You get a lot of idiots, and I see a lot of videos online with these absolute handicapped people, and I'm sorry to say it, that are driving their M5s with a check engine light on, and then they wonder why the car falls apart, and then they want to call it unreliable, or then they get rid of it and pass it on to the next owner, and that's why that owner ends up in so much money problems with the car that they end up wanting to get rid of it thereafter because they've spent so much money on it where the last person neglected it. Now, bearing in mind, this car here has had 8 owners. When you look at it, you wouldn't think that at all. The way it handles, the way it drives, the way the engine sounds, you wouldn't think this car's had 8 owners. Now, this car was under warranty all its life, so they said everything do him. It was owned by a motorsport company as well in the UK, in Oxford, which they paid to have all the latest oil pump, the latest stuff done on the gearbox and everything, which I've got the receipt for. Because it wasn't done for free, so if a lot of you think that BMW are going to revise your parts free, it's not the case. This was paid for by the motorsport company. They paid to have all the latest Vanos oil pump and everything done to this car to make it what it is today, so it didn't have no issues, which is, I think, is very, very good. And it takes people like that to do all that kind of work for you guys to actually come into a reliable M5, because I think a lot of you have had a bad experience with them. A lot of you have bought neglected ones because you bought them cheap, and that's what a lot of it is in the US especially. A lot of them come up cheap, and then everyone goes over crazy and goes and buys it thinking they're getting a cheap M5 and it's going to run perfect. That's just not the case. Don't think if you're buying it cheap it's not going to have issues. It's going to have issues, so then don't come and moan after saying they're unreliable just because it let you down. Then you get people saying that you need to have a warranty or you need to have this, or it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. You don't need to have any of that. Just look at how I got this car and look at what I needed to do. I fixed every single issue this car had. And a lot of you are going to say, oh, not everyone has them skills. Well, if you don't have them skills, don't think of owning this car. It's plain and simple. Don't think of trying to own this car to show off when you can't even look after it, or you don't have the money to look after it. It's very, very simple. If I total up the whole cost, this car didn't cost me actually a lot to actually get overhauled fully, and now it drives absolutely like a dream. The last owner of this car, he's seen his car and he's seen the way I've made it, and he's very, very shocked, you know, how I managed to transform this car into what it is today, considering he got rid of it because he couldn't afford the costs to pay BMW, you know, and most of the work I did all myself. He got rid of it because everything was failing on him, and I bring everything back to the way it should be. So I'm going to leave this video here, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video of the reasons why I do love my E60 M5 now. And now you see that M button, it completely transforms this whole car. And it's this special button right here that completely changed my mind on this car. I never thought in a million years this car would become one of the best cars I've ever driven, considering I actually hated this car at one point. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.